6 centimetres. The people that are making the complaints we are dealing with, again, on a case-by-case basis, but I think that as the balustrades are being removed from the balconies, they can really see the health and safety risk that has been presented, because there is quite a gap between now the balcony base and where the scaffolding is, which children, pets, anything really could slip down that hole, and that would be very detrimental to anybody that was to do that.
Councillor Wing?
I'll follow on from the window gap, which I actually agree with, because you don't want anybody on that scaffolding either. But I understand that there's an increased occurrence of alarms going off due to people's cooking. That would be me, I have to say. I burn a lot of things when I cook. So that's my first question. And as you know, I've made a couple of emails about residents being concerned in the blocks that are presently being refurbished about potential flammable materials being left on the scaffolding. And I must admit, looking at the images I saw, I was really pleased to see that there is no wood. It's all the entire scaffolding is metal. The covering is a fire retardant. We chased that one up earlier on. But it does concern me that the hopper bags, full of hopper bags, were being left on the scaffolding overnight, according to residents, and also some of the cladding that had been removed, which is flammable. I was also concerned that this material, any material that's taken off, I believe leaves site at the end of the day, and that it shouldn't be stored near the buildings. So, and also I think the first one is because of the locked windows and the nature of the building now, cladding. Is there an enhanced fire evacuation procedure? I'm sure there is. I'm sure that's there. And are we certain that residents are fully clear about what they need to do now in the event of a fire or an incident?
Okay, thank you. No, it's fine. I've got it all written down. And I'm really sorry. I've realised I forgot to address the bit about damp and mould as well. So I'll come back to that also. Sorry about that. So, working backwards, the fire evacuation procedure is still a simultaneous evacuation, so that hasn't changed. We have mitigation in place with the Waking Watch, and we also have now, they're called mitigation alarms in every single property and next to the windows. So if there is a fire in the property or outside, the smoke will make those alarms go off within the property, and from one property it will go all the way around. All the building alarms will go off. So people will know that they will need to evacuate. Because we have all that mitigation in place, we don't need to do any further evacuation enhancements. We are also improving our PEEPS process, so our personal evacuation plans. So we are meeting with people individually, going into their properties, speaking to them, filling in a questionnaire about what their needs are, so that we can be more informed for any further mitigation that might be required within their property now, and also to let the fire service know, which we already keep a list of where people cannot self-evacuate, so they know where people might be in their property that haven't been able to get out by themselves. So there's nothing further that we need to do. This is all agreed with Kent Fire and Rescue. They come and they speak to us on a regular basis. We have high engagement with them to make sure we do everything correctly. And everything is also run past our fire risk assessors as well to make sure that we're doing everything that we should do. We do a monthly newsletter while we've got the Tower Block programme going on, and every month in that newsletter it explains to people what the evacuation plan is. There should also be in the communal areas as well. We also we encourage people to speak to us if they are unsure. We've now got resident liaison officers on site, so there's plenty of people for the residents to speak to if they're not sure about the evacuation process, or if they've got any queries or concerns, then they hopefully know how to get in contact with us. And if you know people that are concerned, I would welcome you to encourage them to contact us through the channels that we have, and we'll gladly get back to people and go and visit them in their homes if there's any worries there. You've raised concerns about flammable materials being left on site. So the site is checked every day to make sure materials are removed from site. And
it was particularly on scaffolding. And there were images taken early in the morning of stuff being left on the scaffolding overnight, particularly some cladding and some hopper bags which were actually tied to the scaffolding.
I've seen the hopper bags, the hopper bag photo. We were just checking out the popper bags because we think that there might be fire retardant, but I don't have that information back yet. They are left there overnight to pick up the debris that would be put on the scaffold from the work the next day, is why they are there. The scaffolding is cleared every night from cladding debris that is around and from underneath as well, and then removed from site. If there is any seen, and I know we have addressed it once or twice with Mears, I think they're much more stringent now on checking their sites before it's closed down at the end of the night to make sure there's nothing left behind. The matter raised about the increased alarms due to cooking, I don't know about that, so let me go back to my building safety manager tomorrow morning and just see if there has been an increase of alarms going off, and I'll check that out for you and get back to you. And in regard to the damp and mould, sorry for not coming to that earlier, we haven't had it. The tower blocks generally don't have an issue with damp and mould. The construction is quite good for that. We do, of course, have AWAB's law in place right now, so we are encouraging people that if they do experience damp and mould, especially during this time, then to get in contact with us, and we'll use that process to go and investigate, find out what the root cause is, and apply either the right remedy or advice to the residents to be able to control the damp and mould. I think from the construction of the building and the ventilation that's allowed, in my kind of professional but not very professional opinion on damp and mould, I don't think it's a massive problem, and it's not shown itself to be a problem so far. But obviously as we come through the winter months and it's getting colder now, we expect to have an increase in damp and mould reports to us. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that over the next few months to see how it goes. But thank you for raising that.
Councillor Thanet.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that a constituent of mine has had the problem with condensation and damp and mould as well. And your team has most certainly been very helpful and are dealing, investigating the whole thing. And hopefully they will deal with the landlord and resolve the issues. And I appreciate what they're doing. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Austin.
It's not a question, it's actually a comment, which is that Ms O'Sullivan mentioned TLS's monthly newsletter, and can I hold it up as an example of excellent practice? It uses normal English, not jargon, and any team that has an automatic response going out to people would be well advised to study it as an example of how to communicate with people without getting people confused or puzzled by the terminology of a particular profession. Thank you.
Okay, if we're all done, we're asked to note that report. Okay, excellent, thank you. Moving on to item number 6. Thank you, Sally. Moving on to item number 6, which is phase 3 of the Football Foundation Hub's programme for Jackie Baker's recreation ground. I'll call on Mr Mummo.
Thank you, Chair. This report concerns the potential progression of the Council to phase 3 of the Football Foundation Hubs programme. The Hubs programme would assist with the development of a multi-sports hub site at Jackie Baker's recreation ground. The initial commitment to the project by the Council followed a public petition and a December 2023 Cabinet decision to investigate the options available for future improvements to Jackie Baker's recreation ground. The decision requested officers explore the potential for new sporting facilities, a new pavilion with community facilities, and a new car park to reduce parking on the adjacent residential roads by visitors to the recreation ground. The Football Foundation, Sport England and other national governing bodies of sport have stated that Thanet is a priority area for them. A key principle of the Football Foundation Hubs programme is community engagement to understand local needs, with a focus on supporting lower socio-economic groups, women and girls, disabled people and people with long-term health conditions, and ethnically diverse communities. In addition, the Thanet Local Facilities Football Plan, produced jointly by the Football Association and the Football Foundation, identifies a need for at least 2, but ideally 3, new 11v11 floodlit artificial grass pitches and a new community pavilion at the site. The council successfully submitted an expression of interest, which is phase 1 of the Hubs programme, to the Football Foundation in May 2025 and progressed to phase 2 in June 2025. Phase 2 was a feasibility study of the project. This was undertaken by FMG Consulting on behalf of the Football Foundation. The study was 100% funded by the Football Foundation and is owned by them. FMG presented their findings on the study to the Football Foundation board in October 2025. The council was then invited to progress to phase 3 of the Hubs programme. Phase 3 is outline design, and this is to ensure that a brief and concept design for the project is produced, ready for a more detailed design and planning application to be submitted. If the council agrees to continue on to phase 3, it will be responsible for undertaking community engagement and producing the outline design. The Football Foundation are offering the council a grant of up to 200,000 to cover 60% of the costs of completing phase 3. The council will need to fund 40% of the costs of completing phase 3, and this can be up to 133,000. The total potential spend on phase 3 would be 333,000. And for this reason, it requires a key decision from Cabinet to move forward to phase 3 of the Football Foundation project. As part of the Cabinet decision, it will consider whether to recommend to Council for approval an additional 133,000 budget to be included within revenue to be funded from Section 106 receipts. If the project were to proceed through phase 3 and phase 4 to full capital funding and construction, a 3-pitch site is estimated to be in the region of £10 million. This would mean a £6 million grant coming from the Football Foundation for 60% of the project costs, with the council required to fund £4 million to match fund 40% of the project costs. As part of the project, the council is required to have an internal project manager in place. For this reason, the Cabinet is being asked to approve the recruitment of a sports facilities project manager on a fixed-term contract until the 31st of March 2028, with the costs of the post funded from the project budget. I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Tony. Members, any questions? Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Chair. This is a really exciting opportunity and well done to everybody who's been involved in it. It sounds absolutely great. I've just got 2 questions and I've forgotten one of them, but I'll start with the standard Green Party councillor question. Why is it AstroTurf rather than ordinary grass?
So one of the key things for the Football Foundation and for the Football Association is to create capacity. If we were to have grass pitches, they literally could only have 1 match a week on them, and that would be it. Obviously, this creates the ability to use it 24/7, so it creates capacity.
Great, thank you. May I come back with my second question? Is that okay? So if we were to go ahead and we were successful and we got to the stage where the £6 million comes in and we have to find the 4, are there other places we can go to get that 4, or are we expecting that we're going to have to try and find that out of our own budgets?
Yeah, so as it stands at the moment, we found 1.6 of the 4 million already through Section 106 funding, through general fund receipt from the HRA. And what we're looking to do then is to work with Sport England, who have identified that any non-football part of the facility, they would be interested in helping with funding too. And then we are currently talking to certain foundations who would invest in the facility. And then finally, we have got some grant funding in the Ramsgate area that we would obviously, we're not the decision makers, but we would apply to that as well.
Councillor Green?
I think this is a great scheme, so well done. But am I right in thinking that there would be a net loss in pitches? And if so, have the relevant section of the community been consulted about that?
So at this stage, I can't confirm there will be a net loss. It depends on where the pavilion is placed. We are currently discussing with the school a partnership on facilities that are inside the school area, which would mean that there would be no football pitches lost. It just would be a conversion from grass to artificial grass pitch. So there would be not a net loss in pitches. Obviously, they would turn to artificial grass, but that would mean that the capacity would increase immeasurably. But if we were not to be in partnership with the school, then there would be a potential net loss in grass area. But what we would try to do is continue to keep the number of pitches there that are in place. One of the things that's in our favour at the moment is that the Football Association have just identified or mandated, that older age groups go to smaller sized pitches. So as they're increasing that mandate to an older age group and pitches are getting smaller, thus we're able to keep the same amount of pitches.
Yeah. Councillor Davis.
I think it's excellent news, Tony. Irrespective of if we have to remodel the layout of Jackie Baker's, this is exactly the purpose that land was gifted by. Mrs. Wills. Anyway, that's who gifted it. Jackie Baker was the farmer that was on it. But it was for leisure and facility and I'm particularly pleased that although there's this football focus, if you like, it is to support other sports because historically Jackie Baker's has hosted big hockey tournaments. Used to be an annual thing there that were really successful, and it should be a multi-sport space. I can remember giving particularly windswept and chapped trying to play rugby up there, and you yourself have probably done it. So pound to your elbow, Tony, and it's good to see this, that it's got the lead, if you like, that the popularity of football gives, but allows for the other considerations, and it protects Jackie Baker's for the purpose it's there for, as opposed to being vulnerable to predators.
Councillor Wing.
Oh, well done. I mean, we've known for a long time. I gave feedback on the Ellington Park 1.4 million and said I was quite aware that this area has all the deprivation figures to attract funding in, and the guy that spoke from English Heritage actually said that somewhere like Tunbridge Wells has managed to attract more funding in than we have, which is truly shocking. So I'm really pleased that we finally got to grips with that and using our poverty data to some advantage to lever money in. I totally get with the AstroTurf pitches because they can be played on for 24 hours a day if need be. A grass pitch, it comes winter time and you can't play 2 or 3 matches and then they're gone completely. So although we reduce the number of pitches, we actually increase the number of hours that they can be played on, so I totally get that. My biggest concern is management going forward. This is my area of work, really. I managed a Metropolitan Borough sports facilities, and one of the key things going forward is how you actually manage them going forward. So although they're cost effective and they can be played on all the time, they will need maintenance going forward, and it will be very specific maintenance. Otherwise, we're just going to end up with facilities that are run down quite quickly and abused quite quickly. So although I think this is absolutely fabulous, it's just what we need, I do have concerns, and I would like to ask, have we looked at the financial cost and maintenance required going forward? Because that will be a key element in whether these can be sustained for a significant period of time to offer opportunity for increasing health and well-being for our population.
So the Football Foundation Hubs programme has around 21 sites at the moment, round about that number. I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's 21. How they are, they're all in special purpose vehicles, and it's run mainly by Leisure United, who are the Football Trust's leisure operator side of their business. All of the facilities are designed so that there is an income generator sitting alongside the things that are less income generating. So what was in the feasibility study was the potential for paddle courts to be introduced to become an income generator. I've actually visited Parslows Park, which is one of their key sites, and they had a fitness gym in there. In FMG's report, they confirmed what I thought, which was there are about 5 or 6 really big gyms right next to Jackie Baker's, and that a fitness facility wouldn't work, so that's why they've gone to paddle. The model is that Leisure United are a not-for-profit company, so they do not extract any funds from the project, and they create a sinking fund for all of the various facilities so that they are repaired, and that when they come to end of life, they're replaced. So that sinking fund is put in place. Then from there, any surplus monies that come through that site are then reinvested in grassroots football in other areas of the district. So if there is a surplus, Thanet's football district would benefit from that. We've checked out some of the other sites and their accounts, and they all stack up as making a profitable situation to then reinvest in other facilities. So what we do have, though, is a decision. We don't have to go with Leisure United as the operator. The Football Foundation are obviously more comfortable with us to do that. But as we get through the project, we need to start making those decisions as to where the leisure management of the site sits. One of the things that we're also doing is trying to work with the school to have the athletics track included in the leisure operation, because the school has identified it's a difficult facility for them to manage.
So I'm presuming we go to a formal tendering process to get the management, the people who will run the facilities. And also the other concern I have is by pooling, and I'm not critical of this facility, but I am just worried that we seem to have a big pooling of facilities in one place. So have we done a mapping exercise across Thanet to see where we lack leisure facilities? Because like you said, there's 5 gyms in that area, but I don't think there's a gym in Cliff's End. I'm just worried that we need to do a mapping exercise to make sure we've got some spread of facilities, leisure facilities across the Isle. I'm quite conscious in my area that if you have a child in Central Harbour, your nearest little playground is right at the end of the Western Undercliff, or back into Ellington Park. If you live on the coast, then you've got quite a long way to walk. So I'd like to see that we try to map facilities across the Isle and see where we've got a gap, if that makes sense.
Funny you should say that. So we have received a grant from Sport England for a built facility strategy and a playing pitch strategy. So that's exactly what you're talking about. So probably about a month and a half ago, we'd engaged the sports consultancy to do the built facility strategy, and Knight Page to do the playing pitch strategy. They're in that process at the moment. One of them hopefully will be able to deliver on their project quite soon. The other one's a more longer term project that will need to be done. As part of deciding whether the Football Foundation Hubs programme is the right thing in Jackie Baker's, the Football Association did a look at all of the sites to work out where they needed to place things. In addition to that, the LTA have also done a mapping exercise, and Rugby are currently going through a mapping exercise and have identified that they would like one of the 3G pitches at Jackie Baker's to be compliant for football and rugby. So a lot of that work is going on. It's really great that, as you said, because of the area we're in, we're able to get these things funded by Sport England and the Football Foundation.
Councillor Townend.
One of the sports that's very, very successful on AstroTurf is hockey. I played hockey for many years of my life. And around this area, we have Canterbury that produces some of the England, Great Britain players, both men and women. You have Holcombe, which is just down the road by Gillingham, also produces some of the best hockey players for the country. What I from our conversation now, I note that this is football driven. Is there no space to encourage hockey back into this area? Because, as John said, there was a very, very successful festival held here for many years. And you've got Cliftonville Hockey, who play at St. Lawrence School.
Yeah.
There are 2 pitches over there. So is it purely driven for, I hear you talk about rugby, but is it purely driven for football, or is there a room to accommodate other sports?
So it's not purely driven by football. The Football Foundation will only fund football elements. The other elements, we're looking for funding from Sport England, but those Sport England fundings come through national governing bodies. So we have to talk to the national governing bodies first, get their buy-in, and then Sport England will create that funding that goes to those national governing bodies and then to us. Currently, we've spoken with hockey, and we've spoken with netball. We've got rugby, tennis, and athletics that we've all spoken to. So all of those national governing bodies have had a conversation. Hockey haven't exactly indicated that they are sure that they want a facility at Jackie Baker's. I think what's going to happen is the built facility strategy, which gets delivered, will identify exactly where that is. Some other national governing bodies have been more confident that they want a facility at Jackie Baker's, but the built facility strategy is the bit that then gets the community engagement going here. This is definitely not just a football facility. One of the big things that's coming over the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of conversations with British Cycling, and they want to connect Jackie Baker's through walking and cycling, and so there's some stuff that's going on there. What I would say is this is what we need to tease out in phase 3 of the project. So the 333,000 is to do exactly what you just said, which is tease out exactly what should go where. It could be that the hockey pitch needs to go at a different location, and then we'd be back into a bid to Sport England, etc., etc. But we need to tease that out, and at this stage I can't tell you exactly what sports will go on that site and what won't go on that site. That's something that comes out of that phase 3 project work.
Councillor Curry.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. It's a fantastic project which encourages sport and well-being for young people and all people in Thanet. The only query I have is over the size of the car parks. The car park for 2 pitches for 200 cars, possibly up to 300 cars. I just wondered what criteria was used to come to these figures, and could we encourage people to get to the sports ground without driving their large vehicles? Thanks.
Yeah, so I think first of all there's a metric for that. So one AstroTurf pitch tends to need 10 vehicle needs 100 car parking spaces. Sorry, I nearly said 10. I don't know why I said 10. Needs 100 parking spaces. So that's the metric. If we went for 2 pitches, it would be 200. If we went for 3 pitches, it's 300. Obviously, that's based on their learning from the other 21 sites that they're operating at the moment in order to understand that. From my perspective, one of the key things I'm trying to do at the moment is to work with the school, because the school has car parking already that at the evenings and at the weekends we could access and utilise. We've also got some land right next to the school that we've kind of left as a derelict land that we haven't really done anything with yet. And that lends itself to extending the school's car park. And so there are many options there. The most important thing I would agree with is that we need to make sure that as part of our planning application, we put a very good transport strategy in to try and reduce the number of people using cars. That's why the British cycling conversation is quite exciting, really, because if we can start to talk to them about cycling routes and walking routes, then maybe we're going to reduce the amount of people going by car. The leisure operator has also, in other sites, tried to encourage people who are in teams to kind of go in one car rather than, 4 people in, 1 person in 4 cars, sort of thing. So all of that is definitely something that's a part of this project.
Thanks, Tony.
Councillor Austin.
Could I just pick up on that? Because we've got the cycling and walking infrastructure plan coming to us, haven't we, in January? I'm just wondering if this sort of information is going to feed into that, because these are things that we as ward councillors may be able to help with support on, provide information on, if we know what's happening early enough. And my regular complaint is that we never know what's happening early enough, not just from yourself, but more generally. And there are opportunities where we may be able to help with information or contacts or advice.
Yes, it's difficult because the timing is difficult. We're going into phase 3 and that will iron out some of this stuff that obviously needs to go into the walking and cycling plan. It's a little bit not too dissimilar to the built facility strategy, which I would have liked to have had 6 months ago, so that I could then feed that into phase 3. But now the consultant for the built facility strategy is having to work really fast to get it into phase 3. Similar sort of thing, the local walking and cycling plan is in advance of where we are. So now I've got to move quickly with British Cycling to get that information into the local cycling and walking and cycling plan.
Okay, members, there's a number of recommendations that we're asked to endorse. I will read them out. Recommendation A, which is the progression to phase 3 of the Football Foundation Hubs programme for Jackie Baker's Recreation Ground, which will produce an outline design for the site at a cost of £333,000. Do we all endorse that one? All agreed? Recommendation B is the acceptance of a grant up to £200,000 from the Football Foundation to pay for 60% of the cost of undertaking phase 3. Do we all endorse that one? Okay, recommendation C, funding by the council of up to £133,000 to pay for 40% of the cost of undertaking phase 3. All agree? Recommendation D, the recruitment of a sports facility project manager on a fixed term contract up to the 31st of March 2028 to provide project management resources to this key council project. The cost of this post shall be assigned to the project and funded from within its budget. Do we all agree with that one? Good. And the last one, recommendation E, to recommend to the council for approval an additional £133,000 budget to be included within revenue to be funded from section 106 receipts. And do we all agree with that? Excellent. Thank you, Tony. Okay, moving on to item number 7, which is the land at Shottendane Road. So I'll call on Mr. Porter to introduce that report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. This report provides members of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel with an update about the land at Shottendane Road. Annex 1 shows a red line plan of the site for clarity. You may have seen that plan before, but I think it's important that we're all clear about the site we're talking about. This report follows a previous report about the site in January 2024. The 14-hectare site is owned by the council and is currently in agricultural use. The site was submitted to the local plan call for sites process with an assessed capacity to provide between 220 and 260 new homes, with half of the land set aside as community open space or woodland. Excuse me. The outcome of the call for sites process is not yet known, and no decisions have been taken about whether Shottendane Road will or will not be included. The southern part of the site, illustratively marked as 1B and 2B on the plan Annex 2, is required for the new North Thanet Link Road, although the exact areas may vary once the design for the new road is completed. The new Thanet Link Road is designed to relieve pressure on the A28 and the A256. KCC is progressing designs for the new road, and the government has announced its inclusion in the next round of road and rail infrastructure projects. The report reminds councillors about the duties on the council to plan for the accommodation needs of gypsy and traveller communities in Thanet. A report published in 2019 identified the need for 12 pitches, 7 permanent and 5 transit in the district by 2031. As well as including provision in the next local plan, the current local plan provides for planning applications for pitches to be determined against a range of criteria. Those criteria are set out in the report, so you can see them. The council has previously conducted an exhaustive search of sites in its own ownership against these criteria and determined that the land at Shottendane Road best matched the policy criteria. Cabinet therefore agreed to conduct a public consultation about whether to submit a planning application for a small site providing 4 pitches for gypsy and traveller families on the land at Shottendane Road. The conduct of the consultation and a detailed assessment of the outcome is provided in the report and in Annex 3. The consultation attracted a high level of public interest and 399 responses were received. I do not intend to go through the responses in detail in this introduction as they are detailed in the report. However, in summary, the results overwhelmingly show that the proposal was not supported. A number of valid planning concerns were raised in the responses, including the loss of agricultural land, landscape impact, drainage and highways impacts. I think it is also important to say that many responses demonstrated a level of fear and prejudice based on ethnic stereotypes. There were some responses that were supportive of the proposal. Officers have carefully reflected on the consultation responses in the preparation of this report, and the report asks that councillors do the same in considering it. The report recommends that the council does not submit a planning application in advance of any decisions about the inclusion or otherwise of the land at Shottendane Road in the next Thanet local plan. That does, of course, leave the critical question of how the council will meet its statutory duties to provide for the accommodation needs of gypsy and traveller communities. This report and the report to Cabinet is therefore recommending that Cabinet direct the local plan Cabinet Advisory Group to explore the option to require all large housing sites to set aside some land for gypsy and traveller needs. The Cabinet Advisory Group will be asked to advise on the thresholds for this in a way that best fulfils the duties on the council, the viability of future housing projects and the needs of the community to make recommendations back to Cabinet. Whether this future requirement includes Shottendane Road or not will depend on whether it is included in the next local plan or not, and what the thresholds might be that are determined. Approaching it in this way would enable the council to address the concerns raised in the consultation by properly integrating any proposals into master planning for the site. Finally, the report recommends that the council lobby government for further rounds of funding for the provision of gypsy and traveller sites. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Porter. Thank you. Okay, a number of speakers on this item. I'll call on Mrs. McCourt first to address the panel. Thank you. Can you press your mic, Sally?
I'm not used to having a mic. Suitability of site and questions towards TDC's policy, procedures and practices. The physical suitability of the site is extremely poor. This is a sloping piece of land and it's well known for having surface water issues. Drainage and flood risks have not been properly assessed, and have mitigation costs been part of TDC's planning. This landscape is one of an ancient riverbed, and therefore not only is the gradient of the land unsuitable, but also the risk of flooding, particularly from runoff once a hard standing is in place, will become an issue requiring expensive mitigation action. This is an exposed, windswept site. Have TDC councillors or officers even walked the site, this site themselves? Following communications with a member of the travelling community, they have stated that this site is unsuitable for a gypsy and traveller site. We must question where the consultation feedback is from the gypsy traveller community here in Thanet. Where is TDC's transparency in this respect, please? Thanet's agricultural land is already under intense development pressure. We are losing our BMV farmland to developers almost daily. Targets are set by governments and not taking into consideration the impact losing our farmland will have on our food security today and in the future. Has TDC factored in the impact of this further loss of farmland? And will it add to losses in employment, businesses and damage to Britain's food security? Does TDC know how many farm workers are at risk of losing their jobs, or what level of impact this land loss will have on food production? Access and highway dangers. From the documents available to the public, it appears that the access into and out of the proposed site will be via Caxton Road and Kingston Avenue. These roads are wholly unsuitable for increased traffic. Today, local buses regularly struggle to negotiate these roads with parked vehicles, and at weekends it is nigh on impossible to drive safely through these roads. Placement of this site next to the proposed NTLR creates safety concerns too. Should access to this road be considered from the site, the point at which the traffic meets Shottendane Road will be a dangerous bend. More houses will equal more traffic, and road safety risks must be taken seriously with respect to this site. Consultation quality and timings. Residents have raised substantial and legitimate planning objections, but no one at TDC has directly engaged with the very people the loss of this farmland will have on them. The timing and manner of publication undermine trust. It is any wonder that people are concerned and perhaps come across as unaware of the need for a Gypsy and Traveller site to be located in the Garlinge ward. A consultation that appears designed to minimise scrutiny cannot credibly be called democratic or transparent. Finally, I wish to share the concerns residents of Garlinge ward have with the reporting of the residents' consultation feedback. The labelling of this community as being prejudiced is, in my opinion, unforgivable. I can assure all here I am not prejudiced, and I am not alone in finding this language highly disrespectful to the people of this ward. No one at TDC has engaged with local residents as individuals or in groups, and this practice of labelling this community in such a way itself is prejudiced. It's a shame. I'm very disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs McCall. I'm going to call on the ward councillor now. Councillor Oxborough, one of our newest councillors, and welcome to Scrutiny. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So, I would like to raise several concerns regarding the proposed site, traveller site at Garlinge. The proposal itself conflicts significantly with the government's planning policy for traveller sites. First, the protection of the green belt and agricultural land. The proposed site is farmland classified as either greenfield or green belt, making development inappropriate without exceptional justification. Garlinge farmland is graded as 1 or 2 under the farmland protection policy, representing the best and most versatile agricultural land. Allocating this land for residential use would result in irreversible loss and should be refused. Second, the preference for brownfield sites. Government policy prioritises previously developed untidy or derelict land. We believe brownfield sites across Thanet have not been adequately considered. Similar travelling sites in Canterbury and Herne Bay were built on brownfield land, avoiding destruction of agricultural resources. Third, community interests and consultation. The online survey showed overwhelming opposition to the proposal, yet many Garlinge residents were excluded from consultation. Residents 450 metres from the site were not consulted, while those 1,000 metres away in Salmston were. This raises serious concerns about the respect for community interests. Fourth, reducing community tensions. The handling of this proposal has caused tension and ill feeling. A councillor publicly criticised certain residents' comments, potentially framing objections as prejudiced. Some responses were redacted, and transparency remains lacking. This approach risks further division rather than fostering understanding. The consultation should not have been used politically or as an opportunity to virtue signal. Finally, the infrastructure and site suitability. Access via Caxton Road poses traffic and safety risks, particularly near Garlinge Primary School and along a tight bus route. Additionally, the proposal lacks funding. Government funding has already been rejected. How will this be financed? Further, the scale of requirements raises questions. Communal hall, security measures, land for animals on top of the permanent and transit pitches. For example, the RSPCA recommends between 1 and 2 acres per horse for grazing. Combine this with other needs, the land requirement could be substantial, and precedent shows sites often expand significantly over time. In conclusion, we urge the committee to reconsider the proposal in light of these issues. I, along with the Garlinge residents, are willing to assist in any further review or consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oxborough. And finally, Councillor Whitehead, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll admit to being slightly puzzled by a few of the comments, as they mostly seem to focus around the idea that a planning application is still going in. It is not. What has happened is that we are looking at a strategic view on how we provide for Gypsy and Traveller provision across the whole of Thanet. So the suitability of the land is not being discussed. Whether or not it will be housing is not being discussed. In relation to the entirety of this, to a large degree, the Shottendane site is not being discussed, other than the fact that the North Thanet Link Road now provides an access point which previously didn't exist, and valid planning conditions or valid planning concerns were raised and have been considered in relation to Caxton Road. So a big part of the inclusion of the North Thanet Link Road section is to demonstrate that some of those issues could potentially be addressed by the fact that there is now funding for that road, which there wasn't when the consultation began. So the idea of moving a strategy forward in terms of requiring developers to produce the housing, all of the housing that we need, because that includes provision for gypsy and traveller communities, is to try and make sure that this is something that we are master planning as a community rather than making individual applications in individual places. We said from the start of the consultation that we knew that we would need more than one site. We will always need more than one site, and ensuring that developers do what they should do and apply for support all areas of the community is important. I would disagree entirely with the idea that I have called all of Garlinge prejudiced, because I haven't.
Anybody. That's just, it was in the article. That's all I'm saying. It was a lot.
Excuse me. You're not supposed to be discussing. You're
No,
supposed to be
I'm not
addressing the
discussing.
panel.
Yeah. The reality is that there were very many prejudice comments within that consultation. That does not mean that everyone is prejudiced. But if you are stating that travellers should not be near a school, when travellers have families and children, and part of the planning for gypsy and traveller sites is that they need to be close to school and amenities, I would ask how that is not demonstrating prejudice towards the gypsy and traveller community. That is something that is documented within the consultation responses. What we are asking you to consider tonight is the future of planning for gypsy and travellers as a whole, to try and ensure that we are master planning a future where communities can work together, and that we can ensure that the community building that is clearly needed from some of the responses within the consultation can happen, and can happen in a healthy way. The recommendations that we're bringing forward focus very much on future provision. They focus on what we can do as a local plan CAG in terms of deciding what a larger site is, and I welcome any questions if required. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Members, Councillor Green, I'll come to you first.
It seems to me, Chair, that Council is now proposing to do exactly what this committee suggested they do, which is not to consider this site in isolation, but to look at the general picture. And if they do it through the local plan, then that's exactly what they will be doing.
Councillor Austin.
Yes, I think it was in fact Councillor Green who proposed that from our committee, and it was a sensible proposal. So I welcome this response. I welcome the fact that we have recognised that we have a statutory duty and we have to make sure that we are providing housing for gypsy and traveller communities as we provide for everybody else, but that we integrate that with what we're providing for everybody else, that we ensure that gypsy and traveller communities as other communities have access to schools, have access to hospitals, have access to facilities, but that we don't lump everybody in one place, but we spread people out in a way that works for those communities and works for other communities. Most particularly, I think the fact that we have taken on board the level of concern in the community about this scheme is a positive thing, because we have a responsibility not only to provide housing but also to foster good community relations. It's clear that there are some misapprehensions at the very least out there in the community about gypsy and traveller families. As somebody who's worked extensively with gypsy and traveller families in my own ward, I'm aware of those out there, and I haven't seen any of them borne out in my own experience. And I think that we need to try to foster better community relationships more generally for the benefit of all of us, and I'm very pleased to see the council taking that responsible view, as well as not trying to get any more traffic along Caxton Road. Thank you.
Councillor Maliface.
Thank you. For information, we don't have green belt and Thanet, we have green wedges. Some of the points raised by Mrs McCourt would, of course, come forward if and when a planning application went in. You mentioned the unsuitability, you mentioned it's been a dry riverbed. That would all be taken into court, into consideration. The planning officer would have to produce that information. So I think some of your concerns may be a little, you're in anticipation of the situation. But this is farmland, but the crucial factor is this is land owned by Thanet District Council, and we cannot find brownfield sites in Thanet District Council ownership where we can provide the facilities for the travelling community, because those sites haven't come forward from private owners. So we have to consider what land is available, and as Councillor Whitehead has said, this is a general discussion around the topic. This is not a final decision. So I think it's important that we bear that in mind rather than people jump to conclusions. And well, you're shaking your head, but you are coming to conclusions in a lot of what you've said. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wing.
Thank you. Yeah, I get it straight in my head. I think the whole thing's been confused by presenting that site. We've all got confused. I got confused at the last meeting where Councillor Green made it plainly clear what we needed to do, which was have a strategic view. I also worked alongside the traveller community at the port. One of the things it showed us is that it broke down barriers. We had a degree of apprehension. But, you know, most of those travellers are now settled. We've had no incursions since that point. So it proves to me that that was a really good experiment, that if we embrace our traveller community, because they have a long history here, and find them somewhere permanently to live alongside us, then we will reduce the overall conflict that there seems to be. Let's just get some facts right. 0.12% of the UK population identified as gypsy or travellers in the 2021 census. 78% of them are now settled and living in houses. That's, you know, it's just 71,440 people. It's a tiny, tiny proportion of our population. I actually think we need to go one step further, because if we've all noticed that we've got an increasing number of new age travellers living on our coasts. These are people, and I've just Googled it, these are people that want an alternative style. I wish I could sell up and just travel around the UK. I'd much rather prefer that. But we don't have the infrastructure for it. Some of them are people that are forced into caravans and camper vans because of the cost of living. So I think as a council, we've got to take this one step forward and start looking at alternative provision for our population. And the best way to do that is to look at big developments. So, for instance, perhaps all the big developments that we've approved so far, some percentage of that social housing has to be alternative ways of living. Unfortunately, we've just given planning permission to put houses on our last campsite at St Nick's. You know, we're a coastal community with no campsites. It's just ridiculous. And then we had that one where we approved an additional static home off the Thanet Way. I think there was 8, and they wanted a 12th one. And, you know, that's people who need to live in an alternative way because they can't afford to buy houses. So my take on this is we are making the decision here, not on that piece of land, because you know my viewpoints on building on farmland, although sometimes we're forced into it. We are taking an overall view at when planning applications come forward from developers, tell me if I'm wrong, we will insist on a percentage of that social housing being designated for gypsy and travellers or alternative ways for other people to live. Is that what we're being asked?
Councillor Thanet.
Thank you. I'm the councillor for Clifton Will East, sorry.
I was going to say, what?
Sorry. I live in West. I live with you. I was elected in 2019, and I experienced travellers in those early days. Now, I welcome this idea that we should find a permanent home for them and help them to settle down. But what my concern is that are there safeguards for the community alongside the travellers should there be difficulties and problems. Because what I experienced in those days, and I must say we haven't had travellers in our area for a little while now, thank God, but they were not very nice people. And I'm not saying all travellers are not nice, but what I am saying is that there is a problem, and what are the safeguards for the community that have vulnerable people, elderly people and children in the community, that they could be protected should there be any issues. Are there any that we are looking at in this consultation and in this debate? Thank you.
Councillor Pope.
I just wanted to comment on the sort of concerns around integration and say that in the last census there were 75 gypsy and traveller families in Thanet already, many of whom are living in brick and mortar housing. They are already our neighbours, you know, they're getting on the loop with us, they're in the queue at the supermarket with us, they have elderly people in their communities, children in their communities that are using our services, and they also have the right to have equal access and easy access to schools, work and amenities. So I just think that's a really important thing to consider in this, and I welcome that we're making sure that we've got a wide scope of options of ways to house different people.
Councillor Matterface.
I want to come back quickly, thank you. I also went down to the port with Councillor Wing, and what struck me then was that people wanted to be accepted, they wanted to be in the community, and they were most anxious to get their children into school because they said the children had to learn to read and write to be part of our community. I taught down in Deal, and we had quite a lot of travellers there, and they were all in houses, and one lad said, didn't want to be here, but my mum and dad said I had to learn to read and write so I could get a job. And that's the parents wanting the children to have a better life, because they have discovered that if you are considered not part of our community, it's very difficult then to become part of that community, which is why, as I say, they want to be in houses, they want to integrate, they want to be part of our community, they want to get on the bus with us, they want to shop with us, they don't want to be considered as different to the rest of us. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
I think there's a key word being used, integration, and without being argumentative, we also have had the phrase used about living alongside. And I was going to say, whilst, yeah, it's important, that's not integration. Integration is what's been described here is, you know, why should it matter whether you're a traveller, what your ethnicity is? It shouldn't even be apparent if integration takes place. And that's what we need to do rather than having this defined situation. I think, and as has been said, the experience of those that have had people in the traveller community that wish to integrate, that's the key to this. It's why any fingers crossed, but it is obviously important that there is a Can you hear me now? Yeah. Right. It's not just about the provision of a plot or a caravan or a house. It's about having a vehicle that integrates people into that community, so that we're not looking at them as any different, and they're just functioning within society as we do. Because some of and they may be prejudices, they may be, perceptions and so on, but one of the issues that people have is if you're not contributing to society because you live outside of the system, then why should you enjoy the benefits of that? And that's a very fair argument to be had. But for those, and again, we talk about gypsy and traveller, or we don't talk about, Caucasian Ramsgotonians, and yet that covers such a vast array of attitudes, skills, wrong uns, good uns, So instead of talking about a community, let's talk about individuals and how they behave, because those that want to behave will, And those that don't, it really doesn't matter where they're from, they just need to be dealt with appropriately. So it's about having a cultural thing that brings people in and integrates them into the processes.
But it's about self-identity as well.
Yep.
There are 9 characteristics. They identify as that. I identify as Yorkshire, disregard the accent, you know. But I have integrated, you know.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to pick up on what Councillor Towning said, because I think there is a real worry there that there is a perception among some people that there needs to be some kind of protection for the host community, in inverted commas. We didn't have that when we welcomed Ukrainian refugees into Thanet. We haven't had that when we've welcomed a variety of other groups of different ethnicities, religions, etc. into Thanet. It is not something that we should be thinking about. We should be thinking about how can we make our community welcoming and accepting, and the assumption that people will not be contributing, that the consumption, I've seen this previously in consultation, the assumption that we will provide, for example, traveller pitches free with no rent, whereas we'll be charging rent on our social housing. I mean, it's just nonsense. This is about providing housing for a variety of residents in the Thanet area at a fair price in an appropriate way. It's not about, here's people who are freeloading. Indeed, when we were working with the travellers on the port, every person who was working on that site had their accountant carefully managing all their tax affairs and so on, because they knew that they would be scrutinised more closely than you or I.
Anybody else? Unfortunately, you can't, Councillor Oxford, no. Councillor Wing.
My experience, you know, there was a degree of apprehension. We just didn't see that. We got kids into school and we got people into medical care that desperately needed medical care. You know, I'm a green. I sit here and I liken our gypsy and traveller community to wildlife. They've been here hundreds of years. They've worked on farms, and all of those natural stopping points and working points have gone. They've been destroyed. So they've been forced into a situation where they have to encroach on public land, and that's caused a conflict. And the only way we can deal with that situation and address that situation and that conflict is to actually provide some traveller sites, some properly serviced traveller sites that they contribute to our society. So I just want to ask again, and it might be that Mr. Porter needs to just explain what we're looking at. We are not looking at that site. We are not agreeing to anything on that site. We are talking about a Thanet-wide strategy which will be looking at housing developments and encouraging...
Should we let Mr. Porter come in and explain that himself?
Just explain it in simple terms.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to say I picked up a couple of questions in that discussion. So the first one from you, Councillor Wing. So what are we talking about? So we're absolutely saying that the recommendation is that we don't proceed with the planning application at Shottendane Road in isolation. Well, I've heard the debate, and I understand that that was a previous recommendation from this panel as well. So what we are recommending is that we integrate into the local plan a policy that requires large developers of large sites to set aside a proportion of the land for the needs of gypsy and travellers. Now, exactly how many large sites that needs to apply to and how much land would need to be set aside is something that is going to be subject to detailed work. So it really depends on how many large sites are included in the next local plan and how many sites and how many pitches we need to provide. So, you know, I can't say whether it would be sites of more than 200 homes or more than 250. I just don't know. What we're recommending is that Cabinet direct the Cabinet, the local plan Cabinet advisory group to determine those things and bring a recommendation back to Cabinet. So until all that is resolved and until the next local plan has determined what land is set aside for housing, there won't be any applications on individual sites. That's exactly what this report is saying. I think the second question I picked up was from you, Councillor Thanet, about safeguards. And I think the answer to that is that safeguards are in place to protect everybody in the community from any, from neighbours that maybe are causing antisocial behaviour or committing crimes. They apply to everybody in the same way. And one of the advantages, I guess, of having authorised sites with pitches that people are properly funding and are known to be living there is that those safeguards can be applied in the same way that they apply to anybody else that might be causing any kind of disturbance in the community. So yes, absolutely there would be safeguards in place. I think they were the only two questions I picked up, Chair. Well, I think everything I wanted to say was in the introduction. I suppose there's one other comment that was made in the discussion that I think I'd just like to confirm is my understanding as well, is that we do already have many people that identify as gypsies and travellers living in the community, and many of those people are living in bricks and mortar housing. The County Council, so you may not know this, but it's relevant, the County Council hold a waiting list for gypsy and traveller pitches, and many of our local residents are on that waiting list waiting for a pitch, and of course they can't get one in Thanet because we don't have any, so they would be forced to move to another district if they wanted to live in a caravan rather than in bricks and mortar. So I think that's a relevant factor. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say, really.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, members. We've got two recommendations there, which is to fully consider the findings of the public consultation about the proposals for the land at Shottendane as detailed in Annex 3, and also direct the local plan CAG to include the land for gypsy and traveller accommodation within the site assessments for the next local plan iteration, and to advise about an appropriate threshold above which all sites will be required to set aside land for gypsy and traveller provisions. Sorry, there are more recommendations, I do apologise. Recommendation 3, in line with the recommendation 1, in the event of the land at Shottendane Road is allocated for residential development in the local plan, include provision for gypsy and traveller pitches within the site master plan in a way that addresses the relevant planning concerns raised during the consultation wherever possible. And recommendation 4 is to note the update in relation to the North Thanet Link Road set out in section 5. And recommendation 5 is to continue to contact central government in relation to requirement for further national funding for gypsy and traveller provision. So, do we all agree with those? We can have a proposer, Councillor Austin, and a seconder, Councillor Pope, yeah, and all agree, yeah? Okay, thank you. Right, moving on to item number 8, which is the High Street rental auctions designated areas. And I call on Ms Plant.
Thank you, Chair. This report invites the Overview and Scrutiny Panel members to scrutinise the proposed designation of High Street rental areas in Margate, Cliftonville and Ramsgate. This proposal utilises the new High Street rental auction legislation, which grants the Council the power to auction the rental rights of commercial properties that have been persistently vacant for over a year. The primary objective is to address long-term vacancies, revitalise our town centres and support the local economy by helping small businesses and community groups access empty units.
Andrew, just want to hold on a second while people leave? It's okay, no problem, take time.
Okay. I was trying to be as loud as possible. Right. The selection of these specific areas was driven by data from the Council's annual monitoring report, which identified vacancy rates that are consistently above 8% for all 3 locations, which is the qualifying factor to apply this legislation. Following a positive public engagement exercise, We have also amended the recommendation to expand the Ramsgate designated area to include the junction up to Chatham Road. We now ask the panel to note the proposed areas and provide comments on the recommendations before they are presented to Cabinet. Thank you. I'm happy to address any questions.
Thanks, Andrea. Members, Councillor Davis first.
A couple of questions. One, I presume a typo. I believe it's Chatham Street, not Chatham Road. I haven't even got my pacemaker in tonight.
Councillor Austin. Just a few points about the semantics of Chatham Street, Chatham Road.
Yes, yeah, it's Chatham. It is Chatham Street, not Chatham Road. The other question I had, and again, it's as much out of interest as a critique. Why is Harbour Parade included on there? Because almost every property along there is open and functioning. Perhaps not the way we'd like them to always, but that's all the bars and things along the seafront, and there's not an occupation issue there. And I'm talking about from the bottom of Madeira Walk through to the turning circle of Livestream.
Thank you. Certainly. So Harbour Parade itself is part of Ramsgate. So Ramsgate as an area, as a district, has got the higher vacancy rates that would demand us look at the area for the high street legislation. Specifically, I appreciate currently there may not be any vacancies. However, that area has been identified as primary frontage and high commercial use suitable for the high street town centre utilisation. So it's it may not be anything that's vacant currently. That's so it may not be something that's currently visible as vacant. However, we do have data that there are commercial properties registered for paying business rates that currently meet that criteria on Harbour Street themselves. So we've data driven this decision.
I think it'd be very difficult to make the area of Harbour Street and York Street without putting a line around Harbour Parade. I think.
I didn't say Harbour Street. I said
No, you said Harbour Parade. Yeah, but if you look at the area, it goes down Harbour Street, along Harbour Parade, and then up York Street. So the line has to go somewhere, I would have thought, to make an area. I think you. I was going to say there is empty property on the seafront there anyway.
I was just going to say, I've just thought of that thing and was going to say.
Right, okay, next, Trish. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome this. Obviously, it's really good to see that we're going to finally be able to do something about the properties owned by, companies in the Cayman Islands that don't reply to emails, etc., etc. Two questions. The first one is I'm really surprised to see the high vacancy rate in Margate in comparison with Ramsgate, because Ramsgate is the place that always gets the headlines. Is this the, emptiest shop place in the country, etc., etc., etc. And yet it looks like the vacancy rate in Margate is twice as high, which I'm very surprised by. The second question is, what actually will happen? Once we've designated these, what's the next stages of the process, please?
Certainly. Thank you for the question. Yes, so we are looking retrospectively. The data we have in terms of vacancy is historical data, because that's how it's collected. So it's a backwards look, it's not a forwards look. However, as part of this exercise, also answering your future question, we are commissioning a vacancy register for the areas where we will be applying the high street rental auction. So the intention is that we will apply for funding from central government under the new burdens powers to commission this vacancy register, which will be actual and up to date on the areas which are proposed. Future steps will include closer working relationship with the landlords of the vacant properties and serving the appropriate notices on those landlords to give them the first moratorium period of 8 weeks to secure a tenancy themselves. That's subject to our approval. If not, then it will enter into a sort of prolonged period of marketing where we are entitled to secure a tenant for up to 5 years lease for that site, subject to a bidding process.
Councillor Sim.
May I come back, Chair? That's excellent. That's really good, because at one stage I think we heard that it might require us to compulsorily purchase properties, and that looked like, you know, we'd only be able to afford 2 in Thanet or something. So the fact that we can do that, and it will be a 5-year lease period that we'll be looking at.
Yes, just to clarify, we're not looking at compulsory purchasing anything. We will not be the owners. We are just acting as an intermediary, forcing persistently vacant properties to be let. And we are just acting almost as an agent to find a tenant. And it's just a lease, as interest in property is not freehold, so it's not a compulsory purchase. It's just a lease.
I pick up on the figures as well. 12 empty small shops is completely different to 12 superstores. So I don't want any officer to do work, but I'm just wondering if you took total square footage or square metres of the empty properties, would the figures look differently? I can't talk for Margate or even Broadstairs because I spend more time in Ramsgate, but it certainly feels in Ramsgate that we have a lot of large empty shops that have a huge impact. I also pick up on Councillor Davis's point. Queen Street, if there's an empty shop on Queen Street, it fills really quickly. So stories of the past shut, and it's now a dog groomers, and that happened within weeks. So there are some areas within that zone, there are probably high priority areas. So the high street, you've extended it up, which I think is great, because that is up to Chatham Street, that is a key issue. And I wonder if there's any chance of linking some of the pots of money that the various areas have got, and hopefully Broadstairs will end up with some of that Pride in Place money, of linking things up. If you look at the movement of, and I'm going off task a bit, but I'll get there. If you look at the loss of the doctor's surgery at the Montefiore, the Eastcliff moving to Westwood Cross, the people of Ramsgate will be served by 2 doctor's surgeries only, Dashwood and Eastcliff, my surgery. And it seems to me that we've got an opportunity to work with the NHS and services to try and turn a town centre, large shop, possibly Wilko's, into a walk-in GP surgery, dentist, mental health provision. I constantly sit on planning and I'm told we don't need parking because it's sustainable, but everybody has to get in their car to go to the doctors. So I'm really hoping that there could be some joined up thinking, and we could look at perhaps buying a property and then working with other providers to actually get some real town centre services that people need. So that would be my, I don't know, yeah. I'm not sure I've asked a question, I've sort of promoted an idea.
Thank you. I'll take that on board. The only thing I can really say is that this piece of legislation is innovative, is new. We've never had these type of powers before. This is very new, so we are treading very carefully. What we don't want to do is push the legislation beyond its means and end up not being able to act on what we know it's absolutely possible. And what I can guarantee it's absolutely possible is that we can get commercial town centre use class from a planning point of view back into those shops. I cannot guarantee any extension into healthcare provision or anything like that. And I wouldn't want to push the boundaries on a legislation that's so new that would prejudice us from being able to use it in the future.
Councillor Green.
Could I just say that the Ramsgate Regeneration Board is quite aware of the opportunities that could proceed from this.
Councillor Pope.
I really welcome this, so I don't want to sound negative at all, but I'm just wondering if you know how the bidding process will work yet, and is it purely based on who's willing to pay more, just thinking that it's good to have full shops, but also not to have 100 vape shops and fast food shops and that sort of thing, so yeah, don't mind those.
Thank you. That is actually a question that we've addressed directly with MHCOG. I've got monthly meetings with them and they've been very helpful, and they have identified that although this is a bidding process, it's not a sort of an eBay style bidding process where people could just go back and bid more and more. It is full and final bids, so it is the highest bidder that they look at. However, what MACLG have confirmed is we can look at the mix of businesses, and if we have way too many vape shops, we can say that shop cannot be a vape shop. And that is something that we will be carefully managing in terms of tenant mix, but it will be going to the highest bidder because we have a fiduciary duty to that landlord, and commercially they will have to get the highest rent for it.
Councillor Carney.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question about the revenue on a lease. If the council was involved in working on a lease on a vacant property, would any of the revenue go to the council?
No, none of the revenue from that rent will come to the council. We are just acting as an intermediary. What we do have is from central government, we do have new burdens funding. So there is a set amount of money, irrespective of which property it is, if it leases or if it doesn't, we can apply retrospectively. We can apply for some funding for up to £1,300, I remember off the top of my head, I can't remember. I think it's 1,200 or 1,300 per property as soon as we've served that notice to cover our administrative costs and any work that we need to undertake. But no, none of the rental revenue will come to us. That relationship would be between the tenant and the landlord, and all the funding will be going to the landlord.
Councillor Austin.
That's made me think about some of the big box shops that we have in Ramsgate, as Councillor Wing mentioned. Is there any facility for us to intervene with the landlord to get large shops broken up into smaller units and so on? Or is it simply a question of, here's the shop, who wants it?
That will form part of our next step, the engagement with the landlords. There are case studies out there where this positive engagement has prompted landlords to say, well, actually, you could get more rent if you split it out into 5 smaller units. Then it's basically a calculator for quantum. The bigger the unit is, the less clientele and the more business rate. So there have been support, but it needs the landlord's buy-in. So the landlords need to be present, communicative and engaged in the process to be able to do this. But we can't force them to change the unit into smaller units. My hope and desire from this project is that because we're taking this cooperative approach, landlords will work with us, not against us.
Thank you. As a town council, we've been trying to make those points to landlords, but they don't seem to be listening. They might be listening a bit more with this carrot and stick approach. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
I was interested that Andrea said, if, for example, if there are too many vape shops, you might say no, because at the moment we don't have a cumulative policy. So somebody could open, when it comes to planning, somebody could open there, and we can't refuse it on the grounds that we've already got 6 cafes in Broadstairs doing the same thing. So this would be quite a new approach to the town centre. Obviously, it's not applying to Broadstairs, but it's always been an issue in the past when we haven't been able to reject anything just because competition is supposed to be beneficial. But you'd be saying that not necessarily in this case, if for argument's sake, vape shops or other similar sort of shops.
Yeah, that's exactly my understanding from MACLG. I'm happy to go and reconfirm that aspect. However, we're not saying from a planning perspective that use can't happen. We are just simply saying because of the tenant mix in terms of the sustainability of that business, it just does not make economic sense to have 5 of the same businesses in a row because there's not enough competition, there's not enough customers to sustain volume of sales for the same item. So it's just simply commercial tenant mix, common sense approach.
I'm going to take one more and we need to wind it up. Mr. Councillor Davis, Councillor Wing, that's it then.
There are concerns. There are concerns with this, and I can understand why the landlords are concerned because from what we've been told previously, this is highest bidder gets it, but with no reserve effectively, so that somebody could come along with a derisory offer, and if it's the only offer on that unit, that is what the landlord gets for the next 5 years, and come what may. That is obviously of some concern, and they're always going to be lower offers, because otherwise the people would be in there paying the landlord the rent now. So, so this is to overcome that lack of demand, obviously. What I do think we have to look at as well is if somebody's in on a vastly advantageous rental compared to the meterage of the place, that will then lead to valuation office claims and people going for revaluation, because clearly the market isn't supporting the valuation rental on the previous 5-year block. So this could actually trigger a reduction in revenues. I know it's very complicated, the retention on business rates at the moment, but it has implications that I think, and again, not your fault, but I think it's a very, we need some more answers before ploughing too far down this, because otherwise, as I say, plus free enterprise does say competition's good. Is this giving an advantage? But what about the people that are already there paying full rent and rates, and then someone comes along and moves in competition with them but paying 20% of the rental? We have to consider our existing businesses.
Councillor Wing?
It's just a quick question. I know in the members' briefing, that some time back, which was really good, we were going to lead with 2, and there was a 24, this is not a quick process, I think it was 24 months at least, but I think you were going to lead on two projects. Am I right in assuming that one will be in Margate and one will be in Ramsgate?
There are 5 properties per year, 2 in Margate, 2 in Ramsgate, but we were prioritising with vacant units that have been vacant for the longest in primary frontage. So we've got a planning zone that shows us which is the primary frontage, and we've got secondary frontage and tertiary frontages. But we're starting in primary frontages, which properties have been vacant for longest.
Okay, a quick one from me, and I know we spoke about it before, because I'm heartened to see that the red line from Margate goes right up to the station roundabout, which will include Arlington Arcade. So, question when freshwater come in January or February. Yeah, this doesn't just get thrown together, Okay, we've got recommendations to look at. Just one, that the Overview and Scrutiny Panel asks to endorse the following recommendation to Cabinet, which is to approve the proposed High Street, but designate areas in Margate, Cliftonville and Ramsgate as areas where High Street rental legislation will be applicable. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Britcher, and a seconder, Councillor Green. All agree? Excellent, thank you. And thank you, Angela. Item number 9, which is the Thanet Regeneration Programme update, and I'll call on Mr Porter to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the second regular quarterly update report covering the progress of the Thanet Regeneration Programme. It was previously considered by Cabinet on the 27th of November. The report provides a programme-wide update on the projects in Margate and Ramsgate that form part of the Thanet Regeneration Programme. Each quarter, we'll be taking a similar update report to the Council's Project Delivery Board, the Thanet Regeneration Partnership Board, Cabinet and OSP. These will also form the basis of a quarterly return to government that has to be signed off by the Council's Section 151 officer. Cabinet noted the change in the programme name and guidance from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government from the Simplification Pathway Pilot to the Local Regeneration Fund. I have to say I'm very pleased with that because it's so much easier to say and understand. That said, it's not just a name change. It comes with some new flexibility for the Council to change projects and reallocate resources, provided they comply with the funding criteria. Most importantly, that they provide value for money and contribute to the funding objectives with a focus on economic growth. There is also now an extension of the programme timelines to March 2028 rather than March 2027, which does really help with the delivery of some of the challenging projects, although this is not a reason to slow down on delivery. Cabinet also noted the change of name of Thanet's programme funded through the Local Regeneration Fund to the much more straightforward Thanet Regeneration Programme. Finally, Cabinet noted the progress achieved in the delivery of the approved Thanet regeneration programme projects in this report. So on to the detail. The information provided in the report includes a project-by-project overview with a high-level timelines for each project in Annex 1 and a financial update for the programme in Annex 2. This helps to show where funding has been spent and what is remaining to be delivered for each project. In addition to these reports, the Regeneration and Growth Service continues to engage with stakeholders, provide project updates on our website, including a frequently asked questions section, and send out regular update emails to people signed up for information. The report notes some notable progress on a number of key projects since the last quarterly update, including the Newington project, which is now nearing completion, the Clock House project in Ramsgate, where we are in contract with our constructor and where scaffolding is currently being erected, Margate Digital, where construction is nearing completion and East Kent College are due to move in during January 2026. The Theatre Royal Margate, which you will have seen was on the agenda for this evening, where we will be bringing a report to OSP and Cabinet in January with recommendations about funding for the project, the procurement of a constructor and the future operating arrangements. And finally, the Winter Gardens, where we have confirmed the partnership with Westwood One Theatre, who will be progressing detailed designs and planning applications early in 2026 for a start on site later in the year. There have also been some challenges since the last quarterly update, and most notably the extremely disappointing news about the closure of the Highways Infrastructure project in Ramsgate. Issues at Walpole Bay, which as a live planning application we're not really in a position to discuss in detail tonight, and financial pressures at some projects, particularly the Green Canvas and Theatre Royal, although overall project projections of cost remain within the overall programme budget. This report provides a breakdown of the expenditure by both type and project at the end of Annex 2 for more detailed analysis. So that's all I want to say by way of introduction, but if you have any questions, I'll help as much as I can.
Members, Councillor Green.
It's fortunate, I think, that the government is allowing us to transfer money between projects and also to extend the timeline for delivery, because the Ramsgate projects in particular all seem to be, other than the Newington project, which is going well, in trouble. We've lost the port project, we've lost the hotel at the on the seafront, and we've cut back considerably the fishing project. So there should be quite a bit of money in the scheme that could be applied to the other projects. Some of the other projects haven't really started yet, but that money in the scheme makes it even more disappointing that Cabinet has decided not to go ahead with the highways project on the seafront. That's all I can really say, that it's really disappointing to just about everybody in Ramsgate that knows about it, that can't go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Austin.
Obviously, I'd like to echo what Councillor Green said. We talked earlier about the empty shops, and there was mention of the natural flow of the roads. That natural flow is interrupted by our current highway setup, and we were hoping, we've been working for 7 years to try to get that sorted. We thought we'd done it, and now we're nowhere again. I did write to the head of highways, and when he returned from leave, he said to me, I'm arranging for this to be formally logged in order to provide a full response and give clarity on matters from a KCC perspective, which I look forward to, because I still don't understand. I have read all the papers and I still don't understand why we can't proceed with at least part of this. However, In the meanwhile, I am concerned about the Green Campus. You know, as a Green Councillor, a Green Campus sounds like a dream project to me, but I heard at a meeting the other day that it started as a campus and it's now a town shed. I'm really worried that it's shrinking to a point where it may not be viable or may not be useful. I'm also, Councillor Green mentioned that we've lost the port project, and yet in fact we have two papers with us this evening that say that Cabinet is going to be making a decision about the port at next week's meeting. We don't know anything about that. We can't comment on it. It's rather worrying that this is imminent and no councillors know about it. And once again, my usual hobby horse, councillors need to know about stuff before the general public. And I say that as an email has come into my inbox during this meeting with a press release about a residential parking strategy. It would have been nice if councillors had known about that. We are the council. We should have known about it before it went out to the general public. This is not a comment to you, Bob. It's a general comment about the priority of information. And very often, it would get the same arose during Mr. Marmo's comments. There are things going on that we should know about and that we might be able to contribute to and that we would certainly be able to help publicise if we knew about them at the proper time, and very often we don't. So I'd really appreciate any early intelligence about what may or may not be happening about the Green Campus, because we're already getting a great deal of flack about the road scheme, and if something is going to change about the Green Campus, we'd really like to know about it early doors, please.
Councillor Davis, can we just move along a seat?
I think it's me, not the mic. Right. Without wishing to repeat too much, I think Tricia has raised key points there, particularly to do with the Green Campus. The reason it's called a campus, as I've banged the drum many a time, was because it was supposed to be collaborative, working with the wind farm operators to create a research centre to enhance circular economy down there. There was money available from London Array in particular, and a former general manager had given us an informal commitment that would have taken the levelling up money to be what it was designed to be, was seed money, and we could have had potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs in a centre of excellence. But instead of that, we've got a tin shed with solar panels on it. And at what cost? And this is the issue that I'm having, and I think many people are, is the amount of money that has been squandered to arrive nowhere on one project after another. And now, you know, we're going to be looking at some of the figures later in this meeting, but the port, there's another 1.06 million, I think, gone down the pan there. At what point will people start listening to those specialists and in the community that have actually been forecasting all of this for God knows how many years? And then we come to the fishing fleet, who haven't had a proper conversation. They're now telling me for the best part of a year, in forms of any formal conversation, they don't get responses, and they're being told you can have 100,000. They were supposed to have 3.1 million for a processing centre and fish and chip facility. Other people decided to turn that into some sort of la-di-da outfit with you know, high-end restaurants and things, then decided it wasn't affordable, paid someone else to re-engineer it, and at the moment we're sitting here with no dialogue, no design, and the fishermen being told, well, you can have 100,000. 4 million's just gone back into the pot from the failed road scheme, and that's, you know, we know the passion that's behind this, and I am trying to manage my passion this evening. But why are we not, you know, this report here uses the phrase about, fishing facility, there is no further that could be attributed to the scheme. Well, I'm sorry. There's 4 million just come off the roads. There's money from other things that's being vired around. And if it's going to be vired, let's vire it, support the thriving industry where the boat, you know, the number of boats has grown, instead of just sitting, ignoring them, while paying God knows who, consultant after consultant, to all argue with each other and arrive nowhere. What percentage of that 50 million that was allocated to Ramsgate has been spent so far on just nothing but reportage and banter, effectively, because that's about what it's worth? And I think we need to be asking these questions, because otherwise we're going to be sitting here in another 2 years saying, oh, well, we haven't, you know, how many extensions do we have to have before something's actually delivered here?
Point taken. But those figures are in the report on page 121. Anybody else? Councillor Ring?
Oh, I echo the Ramsgate Highways thing from my Ramsgate colleagues. It's so utterly frustrating. And I must be thick because I still don't understand why, which is why we're pursuing KCC to give us a view from their perspective. Because whatever layout that road is, A, B, C, D or E, that tunnel is still an issue. So I just don't get why the highway scheme has been withdrawn, and that was critical to a lot of our development. But I'm going to go to Ramsgate. I mean, I'm so glad that Newington, as Councillor Green said, is racing along, that at least one project, and we finally see some work in the Clock House. But this is Kent Online today, and I looked at it, it came up on my Facebook feed. Ramsgate to undergo major £20 million transformation. And this is what we're dealing with as TDC, because we are TDC. There was a whole line of negative comments because the people of Ramsgate can't see any change. And we've been at this for 7 or 8 years. There's very little change to our town centre apart from more empty shops. And the promise of another consultation where once again residents of Ramsgate, of which we are all residents of Ramsgate, frustrated, we've got empty shops, crime and disorder. None of it's being addressed. There hasn't. I can't think of one thing that's changed in our town centre since I moved here in 2010. You know, I am thankful that Newington is changed. So we have to make something happen. And it seems to me where there's clear clarity with a lot of the projects in Margate, we've never had clear clarity about a lot of the projects in Ramsgate. There's never been, it's all been fragmented, and our pursuit of the ferry took our eye off the ball, and we pursued that, and now we've got a big amount of money that needs to be dumped somewhere else without a clear vision. So that's my frustration, and that is the frustration of Ramsgate residents at this present moment in time. They cannot see where this money is going, and they cannot see change, particularly in the town centre. But I'd just like to comment on Walpole Bay, and it was something Councillor Green said at planning. Obviously we had a site visit, and I sit on planning, so I'm not going to predetermine myself. But something Councillor Green said, has the council done full consultation on the present plans that are going back to planning? Because there are clearly concerns from residents out there about the project. And I think we could avoid a lot of grief by actually undertaking what Councillor Green suggested at planning, which isn't a planning matter. We could withdraw the planning application and reconsult with residents to make sure that what we're putting down there is really what those people want.
Councillor Coe.
Just to say there was consultation with residents. There was lots of consultation. There was I think there was a presentation at the Walpole Bay Hotel where people come along. It really did go through the whole form of consultation and presentation. So the residents were spoken to about this project.
Just going to bring the Chief Executive now.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment. Obviously, been listening very carefully to what's been said. And I remember something that I said at councillor briefing fairly soon after I started. I think if I count the number of projects in Ramsgate correctly, we're looking at 8 projects. The Levelling Up Fund was 20 million, a little bit more for the High Street Fund, not a lot of money. All of the projects, when they were started, were at the very earliest stages. They weren't developed at all. One of the reasons, I think, why it's taken so long to get where we are. They were being managed by Louise Askew and I think one person at that stage. She didn't have a regeneration team. We had no project managers. And we've been looking at this for, I think, about 5 years, and at least one of those years had a 20% inflation rate in it caused by the Ukrainian war. Now, I'm not seeking to make excuses, but I'm giving a bit of context. I think if you look at it from that perspective, from my point of view, it's a bit of a miracle that we've got to where we are with a number of projects underway. We've had to say goodbye to 2 or 3 of the projects, not just because of the funding problem, but because they've hit a dead end. Because when we bid for them, we didn't understand that there would be a dead end because they were underdeveloped. So I just think it's worth a little bit of context. I absolutely understand councillors' problems with this and concerns about it, but I think a bit of context will perhaps say to you, actually we've done quite well to get to where we are now, and if we can complete probably 5 of those projects, I think, out of the 8, and do it properly, then I think we will have done quite well, will be my take on it. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, some fair comments. And then I'm looking down the timelines. Everything seems to be happening within the next 15 months. So I think, you know, it will all come, and I think everyone will be happy with what comes.
There is a fair point, and I really appreciate what Colin said about the context there. However, what's important in that context is the fact that, for instance, the Bijou Hotel in the Smack Boys home wasn't a new thing. It was the 4th outing. The road project, actually, that was its 2nd or 3rd iteration. It was going to be funded from elsewhere. Then it went on the back burner. Then it stopped. Then it started. And I think that's part of some of the real frustration. The port, well, fantasy ferries, let's not get into it, because otherwise I'll start waving my arms around like a windmill again. But it's just, you know, it's Groundhog Day, and we need to move on those and actually deliver on things, you know. And we've got a lot of chances. This was a 2-year project 3 or 4 years ago, I think, originally. Then it was extended. Now we've got till 28. There is the opportunity not to lose these, but we've got to get behind them and get actually engaged with the people concerned, like the fishing facility, because that could actually be, you know, a real exemplar and turn things round. But instead of that, they're just being ignored. So we have to look at why. But thank you, as I say, and it's not to be argumentative, Colin, but the problem projects are the ones that were a problem when they brought them back out of the same old drawer again and dusted them off. So there's a reason why they weren't delivered in the first place. And now we're paying a price where we're paid, as I say, obscene amounts of money to discover that what didn't work in the first place still doesn't.
Okay.
Chair.
Yeah, I was going to just say.
There was a few questions in some of that. I think it might be useful to respond to, and so I didn't respond to them as we went through. But so I think councillors raised about the highways project, and particularly Councillor Green, you raised about that and the disappointment. And I think we said at the time that the officers shared disappointment. About the fact that we've had to end that project. I do hear what you're saying about not understanding the reasons for that. I know that the officers at the time made a good effort to explain that, but if it's still not clear, I'm more than happy to set aside some time to talk about it, and so that you do understand. But you know, fundamentally, one of the things was the specific requirement from the county for us to commit revenue funding to the management of the new junction, which we absolutely were not able to do. And that really was a fundamental factor in that decision. You know, at some stage in the future, maybe there'll be an opportunity to revisit a highway scheme there, and I think that would be welcome. But what is clear is that any different scheme that came forward, firstly, the county is still likely to currently require a revenue contribution, and secondly, we would have had to go right back to the beginning of the consultation process on any scheme that was amended slightly from the one that we previously put forward, particularly with safety audit processes and so on. So, I mean, that's a very quick explanation. But if you wanted more than that, I would be, you know, happy to set aside some time to talk about it. On the Green Campus, so we've not yet been to planning on the Green Campus, and I thoroughly understand the desire from councillors to want to see a quality building and something that makes an impact. That will be coming forward when the designs are ready, and I think I've said before that we would commit to sharing those designs so that you see what's being proposed, and obviously there's also going to be reports coming through to commit the spending against those projects as well. So there will be opportunity to review that, and I hope when we get to that point, you'll be pleased with the quality of what's being proposed. On the port, I think the only thing I can really say is that the port is no longer part of the regeneration programme. Therefore, it is not considered in this report, because this report is very specifically about the projects in the regeneration programme. And we've taken the decision, or Cabinet took the decision to remove that project because it couldn't be delivered in the form that it was. I don't know what, Mike, whether you want to say anything else about this, but there is a report coming in the next cycle about a way forward for the port. We are still the owners of the port, so just because it's not in the regeneration programme doesn't mean we could ignore it. We've still got to do something. So, but that report will help move that forward. And if you want to say anything about that, Mike, please do. But if you don't, that's fine too. Just before I finish, the issue about how much we've spent on fees, I know that came up, and I know it's come up before. Very specifically, at the end of Annex 2, there is a breakdown of what's been spent across the programme on professional fees, and you will see in there that professional fees currently make up 4.8% of the total programme budget. Now, when you'd expect the average construction project to spend anything up to 20% of its budget on fees, with a good proportion of that before planning for architects and so on, and cost consultants working up proposals, I don't think 4.8% is particularly out of the range that I would expect for construction projects to get to the stage that we're at. And then on the fishing facilities, I think we are still absolutely committed to doing something to support fishermen in the port. I hear what you're saying about engagement, and I think we've been focusing on the delivery of other projects, but we are still committed to do something. I understand the budget is restrictive, but I hear your comments about the unallocated budgets in Ramsgate. We obviously do need to make sure that the overall programme stays within budget. But I hear those comments. I'm not going to comment on Walpole Bay because that is a live planning application. I don't think it would be appropriate to do that at the moment. I think that covers everything, and it just whether you wanted to add anything, Mike.
If you want to tease us with any snippets, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I just wanted to say that I think in the context that the panel have been talking about the port this evening is talking about the port infrastructure project, which was formally closed and moved away from in June, from the Cabinet report in June. There is a report coming to Cabinet this month. That agenda was published this week. And I don't want to talk about that now because that's something that's going to be published this week. But I think we're talking about perhaps two different things. There is the future of the port to consider, but that was talking about the port infrastructure project, which was part of the then LUF programme, or Ramsgate Regeneration Programme.
Yeah, I think we're all waiting to find out the future of the port. I think is what we all want to hear. But like you say, we'll speak about it in January. David, last comment.
Yeah. I just want to be clear, I'm not critical of the officers. I think Louise's team is doing a really amazing job and is grossly under-supported. But am I right in saying that the council will lose 86,000 in revenue money that they've already spent on the roads scheme, which they could claim back if they completed the scheme? And also, the council has received over 2 million in interest on the money they're holding for the whole of the regeneration projects. And yet they're still saying that they can't take the risk of the tunnel being closed for part of the next 2 years, that is the risk involved if they go ahead with the scheme.
So I think there's a couple of questions in there. So there are project costs that would have been incurred so far in the highway scheme, and those project costs which were within the programme, the capital elements of the programme, become a revenue pressure for the council. It is correct that the council has been receiving interest income on the balances. I don't know the exact figure. It's 1.6 million. Thank you, Chris. But those two things are correct. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, can I just come back? No.
Just one. So if the road scheme had gone ahead, it would have taken, I don't know, the next 12 months, 2 years to get the road properly done. So did we estimate what the cost would have been of managing that new road junction once a month when the tunnel's shut? What was the cost? Do we know what the cost of managing that was?
I don't have those figures with me now, I'm afraid. But there was quite a lot of detail in the report. I'm more than happy. But I said earlier, I'm more than happy to spend some time working through that with you. I think Mr. Humber's got something to add.
I just wonder at the 1.5 million that we've got in interest, whether that covers the management of the road junction, certainly up until we so that road scheme can go ahead. It seems to me there's money coming in that we could have allocated to actually managing that once a month closure.
Spoiler alert, the next report sort of sets out our financial position. There's no way. Yeah, no chance. We've used that money without charging officer time significantly to the projects. So I accept that we've received interest associated with these projects, but I've not charged significant officer time to these projects at all, which could have been quite substantial over the period of time. It takes up a significant amount of the corporate management team's focus. So that's just part of the peaks and troughs of our overall treasury management function. So.
Yes, thank you. Just to also come back to you, Councillor Wing, on your question. I think if we were in a position where we knew exactly how many closures there were of the tunnel, then at least we could make a decision based on what we know that would cost, the revenue cost of that. The issue is we don't know. It's unquantifiable, because if the tunnel were closed for an extended period of time, then we would have to cover the revenue cost of that. So the risk there, the financial risk was, if there, we will, recently there was an accident in the tunnel was closed for some time and then reopened again. Those sort of longer term closures would be all at the council's risk, at Thanet Council's risk, and the revenue risk of that, and that's the main part of the problem with it.
Okay, so the Overview and Scrutiny Panel asks to note the following updates, which the first one is to note the change in the programme name and guidance from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government from the Simplification Finder Pilot to Local Generation Fund. To note the name change of the Thanet Regeneration Programme, which will be used when considering the Margate and Ramsgate regeneration projects funded through the Local Regeneration Fund. And to note the progress achieved in the delivery of the approved Thanet regeneration projects in the report. Do all members agree? Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 30. Sorry, time's getting on. Yeah, sure. Okay, item number 13, 2025-26 budget monitoring number 2. Call on Chris Blundell.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this report presents the financial position as of the end of September of 2025, and it forecasts a general fund revenue overspend of £2.9 million for the financial year. I need to be clear about this context. This follows a drawdown of £4.7 million from our reserves last financial year. If this current overspend is not mitigated, it would reduce our earmarked reserves and balances to approximately £6 million by the end of the financial year. In my professional view, as your Section 151 officer, this would place the Council's financial resilience at significant risk.
The report analyses the pressures in two distinct categories. Firstly, systemic or ongoing pressures. These are structural deficits where demand just simply exceeds our base budget. And these account for the majority of the overspend in the report, about 2.2 million. The one that's been well reported in the past is the primary one around homelessness. We're forecasting a £700,000 overspend, despite putting significantly more funding into the service for this financial year, due to the cost of placing vulnerable households in temporary accommodation. Linked to that, we face a £500,000 shortfall due to effectively subsidy losses in relation to housing benefit, where government reimbursement rates for temporary accommodation remain frozen at 90% of 2011 values. Operational services, in addition, present a structural budget issue in waste and cleansing. We're seeing about £750,000 pressure, largely driven by agency spend to cover sickness absence in the service. And beyond that, we're also seeing some one-off pressures. We'd already spoken around the £690,000 charge for abortive costs relating to the port infrastructure project, and there are some other one-off costs that are detailed in the report, and I won't go through them all. In terms of management response, we're not waiting for the year end to act. Corporate management team has already implemented a number of stringent controls. We've now got a weekly spending panel in place, and we've actually reduced the limit. It's now £10,000. We looked at the data, and there wasn't a significant volume of invoices or orders being raised between 10 and 20, so we've lowered the limit. So no purchase order over £10,000 can be raised without having explicit sign-off from the panel, which includes myself as 151 officer, Colin Carmichael as the chief executive, and the two directors to my left. Recruitment is now also strictly controlled through the same panel, and we've ramped up our monitoring, where we'll be reviewing all monitoring for every service area at a corporate level. It was previously done at a service level for just high-risk areas, but now we're looking at all areas. In addition to this, looking ahead to the 26-27 budget, our strategy must be to rebase our budgets. We need to prioritise funding these known systemic pressures properly to stop the cycle of overspending. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Green.
With the sickness problem in the cleansing staff, it's been suggested that by employing a few extra staff, it would A, relieve the pressure on our existing staff, and also would avoid having to employ really expensive contract staff. Has that been investigated?
I'll pass this on to Mr. Humber, but in general terms, there is a premium on agency staff. Mr. Humber is well aware of it's necessary to have some degree of agency budget within the service to manage just sickness and seasonality around annual leave. But there's, as you've mentioned, employment of new officers, both within the HR function and also within the cleansing service itself, that have got a specific task to really look to drive down absence rates. But Mike, I'll let you expand on what your team are doing to tackle that.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Well, actually, Chris, you've just said quite a lot of what we're doing. So we do pay, if you sort of compare agency with in-house staff, it's about 12% more cost. What we're doing is making sure that we are carrying the least possible vacancies that we can, so that we're not spending more on agency than we have to, and looking to increase the establishment post where possible to sort of meet where the minimum agency usage, because again you therefore save 12% compared with using agency. So there are things listed in this report, things like tighter controls on holiday allocations, and what that means is making sure that we don't have lots of people off at the same time, which means we then have to backfill with agency, which costs more money. So we spread a holiday as best as possible over the year, so that we're not reliant on agency more than we need to be. Chris mentioned about sickness absence. We've got sort of dedicated HR resource to help us now, so that's a new thing with sickness absence management in the cleansing services to try to make sure that we're actively engaged with staff who are off sick and working to get them back to work as soon as possible and reducing the likelihood of absence occurring. There's lots of sort of small things, interventions that we're doing to try to address that agency overspend, and it is down. If you compare where it is now this year with where it was last year, it's down. A lot of these interventions are only coming in sort of halfway through the year, so the amount of impact we can have this year is sort of limited from that respect, and we're now at a figure in the 700,000 compared with a projected figure compared with a figure over £1 million last year. So it is different, but I expect everything that we're doing now to have a much greater impact next year. So in 26, 27, that we'll have a much bigger impact on our agency spend because we'll have all these measures in place for a full year. I don't know if that helps.
Anybody else? All getting tired, are we? Councillor Davis.
I just wanted to thank our 151 officer for his prompt response to this horrendous situation, which we can sit and talk about the umpteen reasons for it, but the controls that he's brought in I think are entirely appropriate, and I just want to recognise the fact that that close monitoring is exactly what I believe is needed to take control back on this. So thanks, Chris.
So that's the projection for the end of this financial year. They're projected to be there if the forecast comes to bear that we overspend by £2.9 million. So I'm just trying to find the appropriate section in the report. So they have moved significantly over the last few financial years. So the reserves are set out at section 7 of the report. So at the end of the last financial year, earmarked reserves stood at appropriately 8 million and another £2 million in general fund balances, so a total of 10 million in what we say general fund balances of reserves. We, in the 25-26 budget, when we set that back in February, we committed to take £1 million out of that for a number of projects that were supported and approved by full council. So already before the overspend, we knew reserves were going to be approximately 9 million by the end of the financial year, reserves and balances. If we overspend by 2.9, that'll take that £10 million figure that we had at the start of this financial year down to close to 6. So that's reserves and balances. So about £4 million in earmarked reserves and £2 million in general fund balances at the end of this financial year, which is very, very low and would put us at risk to any particular financial shock.
I'm not used to these wonderful things, you see. Thank you. Could you confirm what the actual reserves were in March 2023?
Yeah, they're closer to £16 million at that point in time. I'd need to do a thorough analysis of where they've moved over that financial year as well. So a lot of that. So if you can see section 7.6 sort of describes a £6 million drawdown of reserves over a 2-year period. Sorry, the majority of that is related to temporary accommodation and TA, which is a national problem, and we're certainly not alone in that. There's a couple of statistics that I've referred to in the reports that I think really grab the attention of the gravity of the TA sort of crisis across the country. So London councils reported in April this year that across London, so all inner and outer London boroughs, they're spending £4 million a day on temporary accommodation. There was another statistic I think I've got in here. Well, no, it's just saying across between the 2 years, 24 to 26, so 64% of that reduction in reserves will be a result of HB and TA pressures. So it's, yeah.
Okay, members. The overview scrutiny panel are asked to note the forecast positions at the 30th of September 2025, the immediate in-year expenditure control measures being implemented by the corporate management team for the remainder of 2025-26 as detailed in section 6 of the report, and the core strategic approach for the 26-27 budget focused on funding the identified systematic pressures and rebasing budgets as detailed in section 8 of the report. Do all members agree? Okay, excellent. Moving on to item 14, changing the council tax support scheme for working age customers. I'll call on Chris again.
Thank you, Chair. So, as the Chair set out, this is in relation to our existing council tax support scheme and a proposal to move to a new model. So our current scheme is based on the old council tax benefit model, which is clearly no longer in place. That goes back to pre-2014. So it's no longer fit for purpose because of the national migration to universal credit. By April 26, we estimate that 98% of our working age claimants of council tax support will be on universal credit. Under our current system, that means that frequent small changes in universal credit trigger new council tax bills, confusing residents and disrupting their instalment plans, where they're constantly presented with rebilling every time they have a minor change in their universal credit allocation. So the proposal is that we're moving to an income grid scheme, and the key features are that will be increasing support. So we propose increasing the maximum support from 90% to 100%. This means over 6,000 of the most vulnerable households in the district will no longer have to pay council tax at all. And it will also simplify the scheme, removing these complex calculations, and aligns it with the universal credit model. In terms of the financial implications, while this increases the total support across the district by 1.35 million, the proposal is actually financially net neutral for next year's budget. This is because we already adjusted our council tax collection rate last year when KCC removed their incentive funding. At that point, that was 98%. We reduced it to 97%, and by implementing this new model, the efficiencies by having a simpler scheme allows us to move this collection assumption back up to 98%, and it's broadly cost neutral. We've consulted widely, and 74.4% of the residents supported the changes, and we do note the concerns raised by the preceptors, and we will be responding to them accordingly. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Matterface.
I was just going to make a comment, what you were saying about universal credit. The number of times I've gone to see people and they're producing, oh, I got this yesterday, oh, I got that last week. I've done a few more hours, and it's just been so, it's concerning for people. So this is a really good idea because they know where they are rather than worry that they're going to get a bill, they're going to get overcharged, and then they get, the complications. So that's good to hear. Thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Yes, I'd like to second what Councillor Matterface said. It's a really good idea. I'm really pleased that we're doing the 100% rebate as well. And I'm assuming that once we've got this going, it will actually take less officer time than faffing about with all those changes.
Absolutely, that's one of the key drivers for it. A similar grid scheme is already in place in Canterbury and Dover, and we have a shared service for council tax collection, so that will definitely make the officers within the shared service much more straightforward, particularly because the three schemes will be aligned and not working on different schemes, but it will reduce workload because you don't have that constant churn of changes where it can be a minor change in payment that then changes their universal credit allocation, which then means they get rebilled on council tax, which means it can delay, when you get a rebill, it can push the payments back and it can make it really difficult to collect that council tax over the year. And there's as officers, there's ethical concerns that we're actually making it more difficult by not collecting council tax regularly, and then asking some of the most vulnerable council households to pay it all right at the end of the financial year. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so overview and scrutiny panel endorses the proposed changes to the council tax support scheme of working age customers. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Pritchard and a seconder, Councillor Austin, and everybody agree? Excellent, well done. And moving back to item number 12, which is the forward plan. Unless anybody's got something to say, can we all note that report? Excellent, thank you. And that concludes the business for tonight's meeting. I declare this meeting closed. Thank you.